Okay, in the description of this video, I'm going to put a link to this full document. It's 633 pages, and it's really, really good stuff. I'm reading on page 576, and it's called The Mystery of the Apocalypse, which is interesting because that seems to be kind of a synchronicity for me. I went up to the main heading because it's something that I'd read further into it that I thought was interesting. So here we go. Possibly part 1. I don't know. Okay. Are you ready? I'm ready, Reverend. I'm ready. Tell me about it. We're going to tell you up in here tonight. The mystery of the apocalypse. The presence of the Temple of Diana at Ephesus, Ephesus, marked that city as sacred to the mystery religion. The 7 wonders of the ancient world were erected to indicate the repositories of recondite knowledge. Of Ephesus, H.P. Blavatsky writes. Okay. Still getting used to my face here. It was a focus of the universal secret doctrines. The weird laboratory, whence fashioned in elegant Grecian phrase, okay, let's call it Greece phase, sprang the quintessence of Buddhistic, Zoroastrian, and Chaldean philosophy. Artemis, the gigantic concrete symbol of theosophico pantheistic abstractions, the great mother of multi-mama. That's cool. Androgyne. That's cool. Mama and the androgynous. And patroness of the Ephesian writings was conquered by Paul. But although the zealous converts of the apostles pretended to burn all their books on curious arts, enough of these remained for them to study when their first zeal had cooled off. And so for that it says, see Isis Unveiled. Okay, being a great center of pagan learning, Ephesus has been the locale for many early Christian myths. The assertion has been made that it was the last domicile of the Virgin Mary. Also that the tomb of St. John the Divine was located there. According to legend, St. John did not depart from this life in the usual manner, but selecting his vault, entered it while still alive, and closing the entrance behind him, vanished forever from mortal sight. A rumor was current in ancient Ephesus that St. John would sleep in his tomb until the return of the Savior, and that when the apostle turned over on his sepulchral couch, sepulchral couch, the earth above moved like the coverlets of a bed. That's kind of neat, huh? Okay. Subjected to more criticism than any other book now incorporated in the New Testament, the Apocalypse, popularly accredited to St. John the Divine, is by far the most important but least understood of the Gnostic Christian writings. Though Justin Martyr declared the book of Revelations to have been written by John, one of Christ's apostles, its authorship was disputed as early as the 2nd century after Christ. And hasn't it all been disputed now, right? Okay, later Jerome questioned, so the once generally accepted notion that the book of Revelation was the actual record of a mystical experience occurring to St. John while that seer was in exile on the Isle of Parmus is now regarded with disfavor by more critical scholars. Other explanations have therefore been advanced to account for the symbolism permeating the volume and the original motive for its writing. The more reasonable of these theories may be summed up as follows. Are you ready? Let's get her done. First, upon the weight of evidence furnished by its own contents, the book of Revelation may well be pronounced a pagan writing. One of the sacred books of the Elysian, I love that word, Eleusianian, or Phrygian mysteries. So instead part of Pythagorean. So it's Phrygian. I write down these different words and then I like to dig into them more later. Okay, as a corollary, the real author of a work setting forth the profundities of Egyptian and Greek mysticism must have been an initiate himself, and consequently obligated to write only the symbolic language of the mysteries. So just, telling us like it is, dude. Second, it is possible that the book of Revelation was written to reconcile the seeming discrepancies between the early Christian and pagan religions' philosophies. When the zealots of the primitive Christian church sought to Christianize pagandom, the pagan initiates retorted with a powerful effort to paganize Christianity. The Christians failed, but the pagans succeeded. With the decline of paganism, the initiated pagan hierophants transferred their base of operation to the new vehicle of primitive Christianity, adopting the symbols of the new cult to conceal those eternal verities which are ever the priceless possession of the wise. The Apocalypse shows clearly the resultant fusion of pagan and Christian symbolism, and thus bears irrefutable evidence of the activities of these initiated minds operating through early Christianity. Third, the theory has been advanced that the book of Revelation represents the attempt made by the unscrupulous members of a certain religious order to undermine the Christian mysteries by satiring their philosophy. This nefarious end they hope to attain by showing the new faith to be merely a restatement of the ancient pagan doctrines, by heaping ridicule upon Christianity, and by using its own symbols towards its disparagement. For example, the star which fell to earth, Revelation 8 and 10 through 11, could be construed to mean the Star of Bethlehem, and the bitterness of that star, called wormwood, and which poisoned mankind, could signify the false teachings of the Christian church. While the last theory has gained a certain measure of popularity, the profundity of the Apocalypse leads the discerning reader to the inevitable conclusion that this is the least plausible of the three hypotheses. To those able to pierce the veil of its symbolism, the inspired source of the document requires no further corroborative evidence. In the final analysis, true philosophy can be limited by neither creed nor faction. In fact, it is incompatible with every artificial limitation of human thought. The question of the pagan or Christian origin of the book of Revelations is, consequently, of little importance. The value of the book, the main value of the book, lies in its magnificent epitome of the universal mystery. An observation which led Saint Jerome to declare that it is susceptible of 7 entirely different interpretations. Untrained in the reaches of ancient thought, the modern theologian can't possibly cope with the complexities of the Apocalypse. For to him, this mystic writing is but a phantasmagoria. Oh, what a great word, right? Phantasmagoria. What a fantastic word. The divine inspiration of which he is sorely tempted to question. In the limited space here available, it is possible to sketch but briefly a few of the salient features of the vision of the seer of Patmos. So you can research that seer, S-E-E-R, of course, of P-A-T-M-O-S. A careful consideration of the various pagan mysteries will assist materially also in filling the inevitable gaps in this abridgment. In the opening chapter of the Apocalypse, St. John describes the Alpha and Omega who stood in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. Surrounded by this flaming planetary regents, this sublime one thus epitomizes in one impression and mysterious figure the entire sweep of humanity's evolutionary growth, past, present, and future. The first stage of man's earthly development, writes Dr. Rudolf Steiner, ran their course at a period when the earth was still fiery, and the first human incarnations were formed out of the element of fire. At the end of his earthly career, man will himself radiate his inner being outwardly created by the force of the element of fire. Okay, so I find that fascinating. Our career, when our career is over, right? So this is our career. We as light workers came here to Mother Earth to raise the vibration, to assist humanity. This is our career, our mission. This is what we do, or however many lifetimes. And when it's done, it's interesting. It talks about the element of fire we just burst out, because I've read a lot of stuff about how we become our own star. And we take our consciousness with us. So, you know, whether, in my stuff before, I've said whether I was male or female, or a butterfly or a tree or a chair, I would know me to be me. My consciousness moves on. And in every lifetime and every experience, you just add to that consciousness. And then when your career's done, you can use it all to create your own world from that star, which we read in, which we just studied in the God Law stuff, that star being a sun, so it creates its own world. Okay? So it's my understanding that we keep doing this and doing this. We help Mother Earth. We do these different things. Then at some point we advance and we become our own, say, solar system, star, sun, whatever. We become our own everything. And we create worlds from what we've gathered that we've learned of other worlds. We create what we liked from all of these different experiences. And then we create a new world, a new cosmos, a new realm. That's just, yeah. That's fascinating, Reverend. I know, right? That's very interesting. It makes me want a sip of water. Okay, wow. Sometimes when I'm bringing stuff through like that, it surprises me, and I love it. The first stage of man's earthly development, okay, according to Dr. Steinem, ran their course at a period when the earth was still fiery, and the first human incarnations were formed out of the element of fire. At the end of his earthly career, man will himself radiate his inner being outward creatively by force of the element of fire. This continuous development from the beginning to the end of the earth reveals itself to the seer when he sees on the astral plane the archetype of evolving man. The beginning of earthly evolution stands forth in the fiery feet, its end in the fiery countenance, and the complete power of the creative word, to be finally one, is seen in the fiery source coming out of the mouth. See the occult seals and the columns. So it's a picture here. It's not a good picture anyway. But Google a picture of the throne of God and of the Lamb. I wanted to say something else up here too. The Word. So you know how they say in the beginning was the Word. Well, the Word is the God Law. The Word is the power. The Word is your magic wand. Whether it's in your mind and you're just thinking it, or you're saying it, or you're writing it, the Word is the power of creation. And obviously, people have different languages, right? So there's different things that mean different words. But the intention, the energy, the frequency of that word is the same. Okay, before the throne of God was the crystal sea, representing the schamium, S-C-H-A-M-A-Y-I-M, or the living waters, which are above the heavens. So that's when they talk about the living waters. So the living waters are above the heavens. So that's interesting. Again, the picture is called the throne of God and of the Lamb. Before the throne also were four creatures, a bull, a lion, an eagle, and a man. This is fascinating. I've never read this, but the Mandela effect of the lion and the lamb moving to the wolf and the lamb. So it's interesting that the four creatures before the throne, and that the lion was switched out. It's just all fascinating. These represented the four corners of creation, and the multitude of eyes with which they were covered are the stars of the firmament. What an interesting synchronicity, right, to what we read tonight about the living God law and the astronomy and the the firmament, the outer earth. The 24 elders have the same significance as the priests gathered around the statue of Ceres, C-E-R-E-S, in the Greater Eleusinian Rite. See, then I'm a researcher, I love that, so then I would look up that, Greater Eleusinian Rite. Eleusinian spelled E-L-E-U-S-I-N-I-A-N. And then, of course, rite is Rite, because it's a rite of passage, a rite of, like the Mayan rites or whatever. And also the Persian genie, or god of the hours of the day. Well, seeing as how time doesn't exist, so there was a god, so there was a god law that created, I was going to say a person, but something created time and had to think of it first. So first there was the word, first there was thought. Okay. Hours of the day. Okay. Who, casting away their crowns, glorify the Holy One. As symbolic of the division of time, the elders adore the timeless and enduring spirit in the midst of them. And then it just kind of misses some words, and it just starts mid-sentence. It says, relationship of the various parts of the Alpha and Omega to the 7 sacred planets of the ancients. To quote, the Logos figure described is a composite picture of the 7 sacred planets. This is so synchronistic, to what I was reading earlier tonight about the God law on the planets. He has the snowy white hair of Kronos, Kronos, father of time. The blazing eyes of wide-seeing Zeus, the sword of Arcs, the shining face of Helios, and the chiton, Chiton, and girdle of Aphrodite. His feet are Mercury, the metal sacred to Hermes, and his voice is like the murmur of the ocean's waves, the many waters, alluding to Selene, the moon goddess of the 4 seasons and of the waters. The 7 stars carried by this immense being in his right hand are the governors of the world. The flaming sword issuing from his mouth is the creative fiat, or word of power, by which the illusion of material permanence is slain. Here also is represented in all his symbolic splendor the Hierophant of the Phrygian mysteries, Phrygian. His various insignia emblematic of his divine attributes. 7 priests bearing lamps, which are what hierophants are his attendants, and the stars carried in his hand are the 7 schools of the mysteries whose power he administrates. 7 is so cool, right? Like the Saint Germain stuff and the 7 rays. There's so much around 7. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and death. In the 2nd and 3rd chapter, St. John delivers to the 7 churches which are in Asia the injunction received by him from the Alpha and Omega. The churches are here analogous to the rungs of a mithraic ladder. What a cool word. Mithraic. And John, being in the Spirit, ascended through the orbits of the 7 sacred planets until he reached the inner surface of the Embryon. That's interesting word too. Empyrean. After the soul of the prophet, writes the anonymous author of Mankind, their origin and destiny. In his ecstatic state has passed in its rapid flight through the 7 spheres, from the sphere of the moon to that of Saturn, or from the planet which corresponds to Cancer, the gate of men, to that of Capricorn, which is the gate of the gods. A new gate opens to him in the highest heaven and in the zodiac, beneath which the 7 planets revolve. In a word, in the firmament, or that which the ancients called crystallinum primum, or the crystal heaven. Isn't that beautiful? And that crystallinum is spelled Crystallinum. And then the second word, Primum. I'll be looking up a lot more on that, seeing how my name is Crystal and everything. Magical. When related to the Eastern system of metaphysics, these churches represent the chakras, or nerves. Oh, the chakras 7. It's fascinating. Or nerve ganglia along the human spine. The door in heaven. They're saying human spine is the door in heaven. Being the Brahmarandhara, or point in the crown chakra. Okay, so that word spelled Brahmarandra, or a point in the crown of the skull, which is also called the Golgotha, which is Golgotha, through which the spinal spirit fire passes to liberation. How cool is that? The Church of Ephesus corresponds to the Muladhara, Muladhara, or sacral ganglion, Ganglion, and the other churches to the higher ganglia according to the order given in Revelation. Dr. Steiner discovers a relationship between the 7 churches and the divisions of the Aryan races. The division of the Aryan race. Thus, the Church of Ephesus stands for the Arch-Indian branch, the Church of Smyrna, the Arch-Persians, the Church of Pergamus, the Chaldean Egyptian Semitic, the Church of Thyatira, the Grecian Latin Roman, the Church of Sardis, the Teuton Anglo-Saxon, the Church of Philadelphia, the Slavic, and the Church of Laodicea, the Manichaean. So again, in the description there'll be a link to this full document. We're now on page 579. The 7 churches also signifies the Greek vowels, of which Alpha and Omega are the first and the last. A difference of opinion exists as to the order in which 7 planars should be related to the church. I think that meant planet. To which the 7 planets should be related to the church. Some proceed from the hypothesis that Saturn represents the church of Ephesus, but from the fact that the city was sacred to the moon goddess, and also that the sphere of the moon is the first above that of the earth. The planets obviously should ascend in their ancient order from the moon to Saturn. From Saturn, the soul would naturally ascend through the door in the Empyrean. In the 4th and 5th chapters, St. John describes the throne of God upon which sat the Holy One, which was and is yet to come. About the throne were 24 lesser seats, upon which sat 24 elders arrayed in white garments and wearing crowns of gold. And out of the throne proceeding lightnings and thundering in voices. And there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. That's pretty neat. He who sat upon the throne held in his right hand a book sealed with 7 seals, which no man in heaven or earth had found worthy to open. Then appeared a lamb, Aries, the first and chief of the zodiacal signs, which had been slain, having 7 horns, and then in parentheses it has rays, so the 7 rays. I got that book on my list to read to you folks too. So the 7 horns is rays, and the 7 eyes, which is lights. The Lamb took the book from the right hand of him that sat upon the throne, and the 4 beasts and all the elders fell down and worshipped God and the Lamb. During the early centuries of the Christian church, the Lamb was universally recognized as the symbol of Christ. Okay? So when the Bible said, in the new heaven and earth, the lion shall lie down with the lamb, they changed that, wolf and lamb. So the predator shall lay down with the lamb. Okay, so the lamb is Christ. You're still trying to figure out why the lion switched from the wolf. Anyway, more on that later. And not until after the 5th synod of Constantinople, 1692, was the figure of the crucified man substituted for that of Agnus Dei, which is Agnusdei. As shrewdly noted by one writer in the subject, the use of a lamb is indicative of the Persian origin of Christianity, for the Persians were the only people to symbolize the first sign of the zodiac by a lamb. Because a lamb was the sin offering of the ancient pagans. The early mystic Christians considered this animal as an appropriate emblem of Christ, whom they regarded as the sin offering of the world. The Greek and the Egyptians highly venerated the lamb or ram, often placing its horns upon the foreheads of their gods. The Scandinavian god, Thor, carried a hammer made from a pair of ram's horns. The lamb is used in preference to the ram, apparently because of its purity and gentleness. Also, since the Creator himself was symbolized by Aries, his son would consequently be the little ram or lamb. The lambskin apron worn by the Freemasons over that part of the body, symbolized by Typhon or Judas, represents that purification. Okay, I think I'm going to stop this here, and we're going to do a part 2. Next time we're going to go to a picture that's called Episodes from the Mysteries of the Apocalypse. And it's from Klauber's Historia Biblica Vetricida et Nova Testimony. All right, so coming soon to a theater near you, part 2 of this document, which will be in the link, or in the description, or whatever.